In 1972, June Lockhart was fired from Miss USA for one reason: she refused to hide her personal life. The morality clause said she had to go, but that was just the beginning. At 44, she rejected the role of Carol Brady and watched someone else become an icon. At 99, she was still doing yoga and asking for wine at fan events. Now at 100, her co-stars are finally talking. The rock concerts, the on-set rebellion, the moment she threatened to sue. This isn't the June Lockhart you remember from Sunday night TV. June Lockhart was born right into the heart of the stage. Her arrival on June 25, 1925, wasn't just another birth. It was more like the next scene in a long-running family drama. Her father, June Lockhart, had already carved a path from Canada to Broadway to Hollywood, starring in over 300 films and even landing an Oscar nomination in 1939. Her mother, Kathleen, had crossed the Atlantic from South Sea, England, bringing with her the grace of British theatre. They named her June after their wedding month, and from that moment, she was raised not just by parents, but by professionals constantly surrounded by scripts, costumes, and character rehearsals. She never really had a quiet childhood. While most kids played with blocks or dolls, June sat in the wings of live stage shows or tiptoed through film sets. Her father's deep voice echoed through their house as he rehearsed lines, while her mother's gentler tone softened the edges of that theatrical world. They didn't just act on stage, they performed through life. The Lockharts took acting seriously, and it showed in every hallway conversation and dinner table discussion. They weren't just raising a daughter, they were sculpting the next generation of Lockhart performers. By the time June could recite full sentences, she was already mimicking monologues. She picked up lines from her father's MGM audition tapes as if they were nursery rhymes. At just 5 years old, she was practicing diction the way most kids learn the alphabet. It was less about becoming a child star and more about being part of the family trade. And when her parents hosted rehearsals at home, June wasn't in another room. She was listening, absorbing, learning the rhythm of character work and the pulse of performance. At 8, she took the stage at the Metropolitan Opera, not for a school recital, but for a major production of Peter Ibbotson. No lines, no words, just her presence. Yet it was enough to make audiences remember her. Surrounded by veteran performers and world-class musicians, June didn't just survive, she stood out. While other children dreamed of playing pretend, she was already doing it professionally. Then came the moment that tied all three Lockharts into film history. In 1938, at age 13, June appeared in A Christmas Carol as Belinda Cratchit. Her father was Bob Cratchit, her mother, Mrs. Cratchit. The warmth they projected wasn't just acting, it was family. The chemistry was real because the relationships were real. MGM's studio lights might have been bright, but they couldn't outshine the glow of that natural connection. 2 years later, in 1940, June stepped into a more demanding arena. She was cast in All This and Heaven 2 alongside Bette Davis. This wasn't a family film. It was grand, serious, emotionally charged, and she had to hold her own. Wearing elaborate costumes and reciting historical dialogue, June watched Davis transform scenes with raw emotion and learned from one of the greats what it meant to dig deep into a role. And she didn't blink. Among the 4 children in that film, she was the only one who would continue acting into adulthood. Her career kept building momentum. By 1941, she had a breakout role in Sergeant York, playing Gary Cooper's sister. It was the top-grossing film that year, and June, only 16 at the time, had to embody purity, faith, and rural honesty. Her performance moved Cooper so much that he gave her a Bible with a personal note. But success came with a strange catch. The real Alvin York had demanded that only morally upright actresses be cast in the film. That purity followed her throughout her career, opening some doors, closing others. Behind the scenes, Hollywood wasn't all glamour. June saw the shadows too. During the making of Meet Me in St. Louis, she witnessed Judy Garland bullying 7-year-old Margaret O'Brien, whispering insults between takes, sabotaging scenes. June stepped in. She defended the child actress in front of the entire crew, refusing to back down even when Garland threatened retaliation. It was a small moment in a big production, but it revealed June's integrity, even in the face of studio power. Her strength was tested again in 1945 during Son of Lassie. The Scottish Highlands were breathtaking, but brutal. Temperatures dropped to 15 degrees, and June filmed in thin costumes, shivering through snow and freezing rain. She fell ill with pneumonia, running a fever of 103 degrees Celsius while continuing to film, terrified that taking time off would cost her career. She collapsed between takes, but never missed a shot. That's how far she was willing to go to stay relevant in an industry that often treated young women as replaceable. Then came She-Wolf of London. What should have been a modest horror project turned into a nightmare. Director Jean Yarbrough demanded realism, which meant 4-hour makeup sessions, toxic fumes, and no breaks. Her skin blistered. She wasn't allowed to leave the chair. Filming went overnight for 18 days straight, and when the transformation scenes were cut, it felt like all that pain had been for nothing. June admitted later she was off her game in that film, and who wouldn't be? But perhaps the hardest battles were the quiet ones. Behind the smiles and modest gowns, studios were pressing her to become something she wasn't. In 1947, she was offered huge contracts if she agreed to pin-up photo shoots, $50,000 per film, but only if she posed for cheesecake shots. When she refused, executives got angry. One even told her family, "Moral purity doesn't sell tickets." But June didn't bend. She'd been raised around artists, not marketers. She wasn't interested in being another face on a calendar. Her parents fought alongside her, and she chose dignity over money, long before it was popular to do so. In the fall of 1947, just as the leaves began to change in New York City, June Lockhart stepped onto the stage of Henry Miller's theater. It was November 4th. She was only 22. But that night, something shifted. Audiences who once saw her as just another child star or the daughter of Hollywood royalty now watched her become Janet Blake in For Love or Money. The play ran 228 performances, ending its streak on June 19, 1948. Critics were startled. One headline said she had arrived on Broadway with the suddenness of an unpredicted comet. The transformation was real. People finally saw her. Not her parents' legacy, not her past roles, but her. And they liked what they saw. Then came March 28, 1948. The Waldorf Astoria was buzzing. That evening, Lockhart walked away with a Tony Award for Outstanding Performance by a Newcomer. A category so rare, it existed only once. No golden statue, just a medallion bracelet, etched with the words, "The American Theater Wing presents your Tony, an Antoinette Perry Award, 1947-48. Years later, she gave it to the Smithsonian. That award sits in American history now. And that night, the world listened on WOR radio as Harry Hirschfield and Burt Littell called her name. She didn't just win that night, she marked Broadway with something unforgettable. That same year, she acted alongside Ingrid Bergman in Joan of Lorraine. Bergman, already at the peak of her stardom, pulled in $129,000 plus 15% of the grosses. Crowds swarmed the Alvin Theater. Lines outside wrapped around the block, for 12 straight weeks. Lockhart stood on that stage too, while Bergman earned the title Queen of the Broadway season. During that time, whispers about Bergman's affair with Rossellini had begun, a scandal that would later hurt the Joan of Arc film, but the play remained untouched, critically praised and fully packed. But Lockhart wasn't content to coast. After her Tony win, she dove headfirst into more serious roles. 8 performances a week, no understudy. That was the life of 1940s Broadway. It chewed people up, but she stayed. Critics praised her for both comedy and drama. She wasn't dabbling, she was doing. And in an era where live audiences and demanding schedules could crack even seasoned actors, she showed up every night, giving everything she had. That effort built her future. It wasn't just practice, it was preparation for what would come next. At the heart of Broadway's social life was Sardi's. Lockhart knew it well. Actors and producers mingled there after shows. Gossip flew across tables while caricatures of stars hung on the walls. Sardi's was more than a restaurant, it was a rite of passage. If you were accepted there, you had arrived. And for Lockhart, being part of that scene meant she wasn't just visiting Broadway anymore. She belonged to it. In 1953, she received her first Emmy nomination for Best Actress. She didn't win, Lucille Ball did, but that loss would become its own strange victory. During that time, Lockhart auditioned for a new pilot, Lassie, acting opposite a boy named Tommy Rettig. Her chemistry was natural, even maternal. Though she didn't get the role then, CBS kept her screen tests. Years later, when the show became a hit and ranked number 24 in 1957, they remembered her. Ironically, losing the Emmy preserved her availability. Ball's win cleared Lockhart's path. By 1958, she finally stepped into the Lassie world for good, taking over the mother role from Cloris Leachman. Her first rehearsal with 8-year-old John Provost wasn't gentle. He kicked her legs under the table during a kitchen scene. Once, twice, then again. Lockhart calmly told him to stop. Just one finger in his face, one firm line. That moment set the tone for the next 6 years. Behind the scenes, she worried about his size, quietly ordered big breakfasts to her dressing room, and tricked him into eating by pretending they needed to rehearse. She mothered him on and off the screen. In 1959, she earned another Emmy nomination. But something else was happening, something harder to talk about. Rumors spread about how animal trainers treated the Lassie dogs. The Weatherwax family used complex commands, and scenes had to be reshot if a command and dialogue overlapped. Lockhart saw enough to start asking questions. She became a voice for better animal treatment. One Christmas, when the dog developed a rash that revealed his true gender, Max Factor created a fur merkin to cover it. Lockhart made everyone laugh with a risque carol about the collie's hidden parts. Her humor was sharp, but her concern was real. Between 1960 and 1964, things got trickier. Her Lassie contract came with strict rules. She couldn't endorse alcohol, deodorants, laxatives, nothing even mildly controversial. She couldn't play sophisticated women, but she found ways to rebel. In episodes like The Fisherman, she fished alone, challenging what a farm wife could do. She ad-libbed lines. She pushed back against scripts that made her lesser than her husband. Small moves, but in 1960s television, they were radical, and she didn't stop. Her exit in 1964 wasn't quiet. She demanded $5,000 per episode, a bold ask. Networks said no. They replaced her with June Dayton, but fans revolted. Over 10,000 letters arrived at CBS. Ratings dropped. The chemistry was gone. The warmth had vanished. But Lockhart didn't return. Pride held both sides apart. Still, she made her mark. That standoff became one of TV's first real salary battles for a female star. She didn't just act, she fought. In 1965, June Lockhart wasn't just another actress hoping to land a role on Lost in Space. She took things into her own hands, diving deep into physics books and space travel guides to prepare. She was 40 years old, up against 127 other actresses, but when the director Irwin Allen staged a fake alien attack during the audition, Lockhart didn't scream or freeze. She stayed calm, evaluated the threat using logic, and even came up with an evacuation plan on the spot. That moment changed everything. Allen hired her immediately and told people she was exactly the kind of mother who could survive in space. He had already noticed her in another of his shows, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and her deep prep made it easy for her to deliver the show's technical dialogue like she actually understood it. But being a space mom wasn't easy, especially when real-life fears kicked in. During the pilot episodes, she had to shoot a scene inside a vehicle called the Chariot. It was supposed to look like the family was drowning in alien water, so the crew dumped 6 massive drums of water onto the set. They thought the Chariot would hold, but it didn't. The water started flooding in, and since everyone was strapped in, there was nowhere to go. Lockhart had claustrophobia, and it got real. Her panic in that scene wasn't acting. The jumpsuits they wore weighed over 35 pounds when dry, and even more when soaked, making every move exhausting. Some days stretched to 14 hours, and she needed help just to stand up. Eventually, her fear led to real changes. She asked the writers to avoid scenes set inside the ship's tight quarters, so they started writing more episodes that took place on alien surfaces. Off-screen, Lockhart was nothing like her strict TV mom character. She became a kind of backstage rock and roll guide for her young co-stars, Bill Mumy and Angela Cartwright. She'd sneak them into Whiskey A Go-Go in the back of her 1913 fire engine truck, hiding them from paparazzi, just to let them experience the music scene on Sunset Strip. They saw Simon and Garfunkel, The Doors, and even unknown bands just starting out. One of those bands was Hourglass, who she hired to play at her Halloween party in 1967. That group later became the Allman Brothers Band. Between scenes, Lockhart blasted rock music to keep the energy up. Mumy remembers how she transformed the set with that music, turning everything lighter and fun. She even used her connections to get them into big concerts, always pulling strings behind the scenes. Then came season 3, and things got weird. The show's tone shifted toward the ridiculous, especially with episodes like The Great Vegetable Rebellion. Lockhart hated it. Filming that one meant fighting giant talking plants in the desert, and to keep herself sane, she brought a portable radio and blasted Beatles albums like Sgt. Pepper and Magical Mystery Tour between takes. The crew loved it so much that they actually added breaks to the filming schedule just so she could play music. The director resisted at first, but when he saw how much better everyone worked afterward, he stopped complaining. Lockhart later said the music was the only thing that got her through what she called the most embarrassing episode in TV history. It aired in February 1968 and became infamous. But the biggest conflict wasn't with a scene or a costume, it was with Jonathan Harris, the actor who played Dr. Smith. As his character became more comedic, Harris started going off script, tossing in sexist insults toward Lockhart's character. He called her a silly housewife and worse, mocking her as if she belonged only in the space kitchen. During one episode, he went too far. Lockhart walked off set and demanded a meeting with Irwin Allen. The conversation lasted 3 hours. She told him straight the show was promoting harmful stereotypes, and she wouldn't stand for it. Harris tried to defend himself, saying it was just character development. But Lockhart wasn't buying it. She threatened to quit and even considered legal action. In the end, Allen backed her. Harris had to apologize and stick to the script for the rest of the show. When Babe Bernadette passed away in October 1968, Petticoat Junction lost more than just a lead actress. It lost its heart. The show had already begun to falter in ratings as her appearances in Season 5 dwindled due to illness, and CBS was desperate for a revival. That's when June Lockhart entered the scene. Known to audiences from Lassie and Lost in Space, she arrived as Dr. Janet Craig, the Newtown Doctor, in an episode that aired on November 16, 1968. But this wasn't just another character role for her. It was a subtle irony. For years, Lockhart had battled fertility issues in private, and now she was playing a nurturing, wise figure in a community built on family and tradition. She wasn't just replacing a character, she was filling a void left by a television icon. Though she brought poise and calm to the role, the shift didn't stop the decline. The series wrapped up in 1970, quietly ending an era. Around the same time, June Lockhart's face became a familiar sight at a very different kind of American institution, the Miss USA pageant. From 1967 to 1973, she co-hosted the event alongside Bob Barker. It was a golden gig until scandal hit in 1972. That year, the pageant took place in Puerto Rico, where bomb blasts during the ceremony caused chaos. But what ultimately ended her run had nothing to do with explosions. It was love, or at least what the tabloids decided to call a scandal. Lockhart was in a relationship with John Cannon, a man 25 years younger than her. They weren't married. They were simply living together. But in the world of early 70s television, especially the pageant world, morality clauses ruled everything. One tabloid headline later, and she was out. Her 6-year stretch with the pageant ended not because of performance, but because of perception. That wasn't her only brush with public spectacle. Every Thanksgiving, Americans tuned in to see balloons drift through the streets of New York, and often saw June Lockhart waving from a float. She was a regular at Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade throughout the 1960s and 70s. But behind the smiling face were hazards no one saw. During a late 1960s rehearsal, a windstorm whipped through the streets, destabilizing her float. She lost her footing and tumbled, bruising her arms and legs in the process. She later joked about it, calling it part of the show business adventure. But the accident was real, and so were the risks. It was a reminder that even the most polished appearances had their chaotic backstage moments. Then came something no one expected: NASA. After playing a spacefaring mom on Lost in Space, Lockhart didn't leave her fascination with rockets behind. In the 1970s, she lent her voice to NASA public service announcements, earning $1,000 per spot, a handsome fee at the time. This wasn't just voice work for her. It became a passion. She attended shuttle launches. She visited mission control. She once sat in the control room at 2:09 a.m., watching astronauts wake to the tune of her father's 1919 composition, "The World is Waiting for the Sunrise." The commander radioed down, confused about the time, then quipped that the crew was wondering what Lassie's mother was doing in mission control. NASA treated her like royalty, and in return, she gave space exploration a warm, familiar voice. But fame is strange. Just when you think you've secured your legacy, one decision can haunt you forever. In 1969, Sherwood Schwartz offered her the role of Carol Brady on The Brady Bunch. She declined. At 44, Lockhart didn't want to be typecast again as a TV mom. She wanted different roles, new paths. Instead, the part went to Florence Henderson, who became the quintessential American mother, a pop culture icon. The Brady Bunch exploded into syndication, spun off shows, and kept Henderson in the spotlight for decades. Meanwhile, Lockhart kept working, but the chance to define a generation slipped through her fingers. She later admitted regret, watching as Henderson rode the wave she turned down. You'd never guess that the woman who played America's perfect TV mom in the 50s and 60s was also sneaking off to rock clubs in Hollywood. June Lockhart was living a double life, and she didn't care who found out. She called herself a music fan forever, and she wasn't exaggerating. While playing a wholesome mother on screen, she was listening to the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Chicago, and David Bowie. She once said she only kept one photo in her wallet. It wasn't of her kids, it was of Bowie. She didn't just enjoy music from a distance. She was out there, in it, attending secret club performances during the peak of the 1967 Summer of Love. Her favorite place? Whiskey A Go-Go. Her TV son Bill Mumy used to call her a rock and roll goddess because she truly lived for it. No act, no posing. She was the real deal. In 1968, she threw a Halloween party at her house. She paid $500 to book a band no one had really heard of yet, Hourglass. That lineup included two brothers, Dwayne and Greg Allman. They played all night until the sun came up, blowing away everyone there. Lockhart didn't stop at hosting. She even brought the band to the Lost in Space set to meet the cast and crew. Within a few months, Hourglass became the Allman Brothers Band. Mumy said it straight. Lockhart played a big part in launching their fame. She wasn't just a fan, she was a mentor. During the late 60s, she would take her young co-stars to actual rock concerts. In 1967, she brought 13-year-old Mumy and 15-year-old Angela Cartwright to Whiskey A Go-Go. There, they went backstage with the Hourglass Band and watched the nitty-gritty Dirt Band perform live. These kids weren't even old enough to drive, but there they were, soaking in raw, legendary music. Lockhart didn't stop there. She got them tickets to Simon and Garfunkel concerts, too. When she could have stayed in her trailer between takes, she chose to educate them about lyrics, rhythms, and everything rock stood for. Mumy says it changed how they thought. Music gave their young minds a whole new direction. When cameras stopped rolling on Lost in Space, she'd blast the radio and share the latest tracks with the crew. People didn't expect that from someone known for soft-spoken lines and pastel cardigans, but Lockhart made music a bridge, something she used to connect with everyone on set. It wasn't just noise to her, it was culture. Mumy even credits her for sparking his own music career later on. She made a real impact that didn't fade with time. Even as she got older, she stayed tuned in. On set, she was still the mistress of Scrabble, but also the one playing Bowie before a take. And NASA noticed. They said her mix of curiosity and that rebellious edge helped inspire astronauts. Some of them grew up watching Lost in Space and later told her she played a role in pushing them toward real space. Throughout her career, she never gave in to Hollywood pressure. She didn't go for sultry roles, didn't fake a younger look, didn't hide her tastes. At 99, Mumy still called her one of the smartest people he's ever known. She stayed true to what she loved, and it wasn't just acting. It was the music, always. She turned 100 in June 2025. No massive gala. Just a quiet day in her New York home with her daughters and a few close visitors. She's sharp as ever, reading 3 newspapers every morning. Her last big public event was all the way back in 2015, and she's since stepped back from the spotlight. But in her own space, she's still herself, independent, clear-headed, and totally in control. She's still got fans. John Provost, who played her son on Lassie, met her at an autograph event. and was shocked when she pulled off a yoga stretch, touched her head to her knee, and casually asked for a Chardonnay. She told people she felt good. No illnesses, nothing serious. Her secret? She joked it was good plastic surgery and a few young boyfriends. She never won an Emmy, even though she was nominated twice, once in 1953 and again in 1959. Both times, Lucille Ball won instead. But she holds something even rarer. 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, one for movies and one for TV, both awarded on the same day in 1960. At 96, she even voiced a role in the Netflix reboot of Lost in Space, linking back to a show she helped make iconic almost 60 years earlier. She's also got Broadway trophies, a Tony, a Donaldson, and a Theatre World Award. And then there's the moment she became an actual space icon. In 2005, her poster was hung inside the International Space Station. In 2024, NASA gave her the Exceptional Public Achievement Medal. Fans begged for her to appear in new Lost in Space content, but she declined. Still, her stories live on, especially the one about hiring a young Dwayne and Greg Allman for that Halloween party. Those stories are viral now, especially on TikTok. People call her the rock rebel behind the mom roles, the one who brought guitars and grit into the lives of kids who thought she was just reading bedtime lines.